A pact which is deadly wounded, and with it a war scenery of very harsh dimensions and consequences. Unmeasurable gains ground. They face a power of a different sidewalks, but one of those times when the United States will not confront an easy enemy that accumulates years of resistance against the imperial interests and designs, and has sought its space as an important actor of the international geopolitics. In the middle, other actors, one like very ambiguous like Europe, and others like China and Russia, are more ideological related to the Iranian proposal and related to the need for peace of each one, respecting the natural space of the opposite. Nuclear agreement 5+1. Is it unsurmountable? Will it lead to a war in the Persian Gulf? This is our critical move today. This is what we're going to analyze. We'll have more information, guests, and as always, we have your critical thinking. Let's begin. Okay, let's start with our first information. Last week, Iran took a third step in its progressive withdrawal from the commitment under the International Nuclear Agreement, also known as the International Nuclear Agreement, and from which the U.S. withdrew in 2018. The confirmation was made by the spokesman of the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization, Behrouz Kamalvandi. So Iran put into operation 20 IR-4 centrifuge to enrich uranium instead of the 10 that were allowed in the said pact. In the next 2 months, 164 IR-4 centrifuge chain machines will be operational. The spokeswoman said so. Let us remember that Iran started with the strategic goal, with the pressure on the rest of the signatories, to do something in face of the suffocating U.S. measures. And this is what Iran says. This is a multilateral pact. It's not possible that only one of the parts holds up it, and Europe has not been able to compensate the absence of the U.S. and has not been able to stop the imposition of new measures. The third steps consist in lifting the investigation on the ban on investigation. This is what Rouhani said. From now on, I announce the third step. The Organization of Atomic Energy has the order to start investigation and development. The idea is to expand the field of investigation, centrifuge, different types of new centrifuge, everything that is needed to enrich uranium. And as always, in these affairs, Iran definitely will take the right conditions, the right decisions in the right moment. And as always, in these type of affairs, everybody sets the name it wants to. The United States says it's a violation to the agreement. This is nothing new, because that's how they want to justify their absence from the pact. And in this sense, the Secretary of Defense of the U.S. said the following past September 7th. It's not to surprise that Iran has violated the agreement. It has violated for many years now. It's not new that they try to pursue an offensive. What, in general terms, they want to defend the rights of navigation. Obviously, our references and in the case of France, this is what the French government said. We can only confirm our objective to make Iran go back to respecting the Vienna Accord, and we will do everything possible to do so. The President of France is compromised to this. If you think, why don't we go to our map? Iran, strategical, not aligned, and persevering. Geopolitical considerations. It's the Asian Persian Republic. It's a great hydrocarbon reserve for oil and gas. And it controls the Hormuz Strait. It's a key point for transporting oil and other goods. This Strait of Hormuz is a choke point. It's very narrow and through which many goods pass by, and it passes through the Oman and the Persian Gulf. 40% of the oil transfers through that part. This is one of the key elements they have to avoid any type of conflict. With more than 81 million of inhabitants, it's home of the oldest civilization in the world, and it's one of the most diverse ethnic countries in the world. From 1979, with the Islamic Revolution, there was a local and regional paradigmatic change that is still going up until now. There is a new leadership that puts an end to the Western influence from giving up all of the rights to the West, and now they have a strategic relationship with other countries. And now the end of this is defense of national sovereignty and territorial integrity, economic growth, and equitable development, defense of the rights of the Muslim and national liberation movements, confrontation with Israel and the West, especially the U.S. This has happened through a strong defense of the Palestinian rights and Islamic policy based on the Shiite principles. So in this way, the Muslim world is a hot point for the international diplomacy. What turns out of all this? Self-sufficiency, political sovereignty, customized development model, system sustainable, strategic distance of powers, outside global networks. And what happens with all of this? And the U.S. puts the heart of the global conflict in the Near East. This would be contrary to whatever Trump says, because maybe he retook the policies of George Bush, and he does away with the Obama policies, although we may think that he could be combining both. Let's add digital websites. Let's go to 12th of July of this year. We have an article saying Iran much more than oil. The author, Rodolfo Bueno, says that it's believed that the crisis in the Persian Gulf is much more serious than everybody thinks. If there is a confrontation with Iran and the U.S. and the Strait of Hormuz is closed, the international economy would collapse. Following, you can see in a paragraph, Trump has advisors that don't like peace. They have two groups. They have pigeons and eagles. John Bolton is the type of advisor that wants to seek war. That war would be counteracting to his possible re-election, and that's why he probably suspended an attack at the end of last year, because allegedly what he said was that he didn't want to put at risk the life of 150 people. This is what Trump said. Although the author says that he thinks that he didn't do so because this would endanger his re-election. And Putin, the president of Russia, said that the use of force on behalf of the U.S. on Iran that would affect Washington would be a catastrophe in that region. So these are the ways that the people see it here. Let's go to this Actualidad RT. This is September 2nd. It says that the UK is studying the possibility to send drones to the Persian Gulf in the midst of tensions with Iran. Several actions have been done in this geostrategical area, in the Persian Gulf, we mean. It says that the Royal Army is considering the possibility to display some drones to the tense situation in Iran. Should this decision go through, the aircrafts that would overflow Iran, the objective would be to support the Russian warcrafts that go through the Hormuz Strait. These operations would add to the ones that the U.S. are already carrying out. And RT also says, so yes, there are several movements that have been done. Especially this Saturday, the Iranian army had detained 12 crew members that tried to do smuggling of oil in the region. Let's go to another website. Well, this is a recommendation. We're going to rebellion.org. This is of Robert Fisk. It's about time that we pay attention to everything that's going on of the so-called crisis in the Middle East. This charade of lies of Trump. He's racist, misogynist, and mentally disturbed. That has two advisors that are not stable either. Tried to threaten Iran with war. They've gone so far to say that to push him to withdraw from the treaty. And now they're playing with any type of risk in the Strait of Hormuz. And let's not forget that the Middle East is the tomb of great powers. This is what this journalist, Robert Fisk, thinks. Let's see if there's any contrast of what our researchers or investigators, guests think. Let's go to our correspondents. Let's go to Damascus. Hisham Walus, he's the main correspondent for Telesur. He's always up to date to everything that's going on. Hi, Hisham. Can you tell us what's going on in this topic? Hi, colleagues. Dear friends, Iran officially communicated that they were going to go to the third step and they were going to break the agreement. The spokesman for Iran said that they were going to, they had the decision of the Persian country that this was based on the rights of Iran. They also clear out that Iran has begun this third step, and by which they will go forward with research and development. He also said that Iran is also willing to continue the negotiation with the European country, although they have not gone through with their promises. They say that Iran are also willing to implement all of the articles of the agreement, once again, if and only if the other parts also complies to the agreement. So let's not forget that the three countries that are signatories of this agreement, that are the European countries, have been unable to help Iran to see that all of the parties comply to the agreement. This was after 60 days that Iran gave them as a deadline to do something. So what they're asking is that uranium that what Iran is going to do is going to enrich much more amount of uranium, and this is the step that in the information that the enrichment will go forward. Likewise, after this decision, the general director of the International Energy Deputy went to this Persian country and met with some authorities, and all of the authorities said that their decision did not violate the agreement. On the contrary, it tries to preserve by pressuring the other parts to also comply with the statements in the agreement. And they asked for this organization to go forward with their operations in Iran in a responsible and respectful way. They're talking about the agency, the International Atomic Energy Organization. It's also important to say that Iran said that they will continue with the agreement if it is guaranteed that they could sell their petroleum in a free way. And in the same way, they can get their income from the European banks and Western banks where they have all of their accounts that are blocked. It's important to point out that after the liberation of their oil carrier, this was on last Sunday, according to the Iranian chancellor, they were able to go to another port, and according to the Space Technology Organization, published some images, and it said that they went to a Syrian port. This was the excuse under which they stopped this boat in Gibraltar, accusing Iran of violating the treaty. However, Iran says that nobody has the right to accuse them of commercializing with Syria, because the fact of having trade with Syria, it is a legal act and it does not violate any article. And it's finally, Iran acts sternly in this way, and what they want is to obligate Europe to pressure the U.S. to guarantee that the U.S. will fulfill the agreement and that they lift the sanctions and the blockade that were imposed on May 2018. Finally, the answer of the European country. The European countries have manifested their concerns, assuring that these measures are just trying to bring down the agreement that have been criticized by the Iranian authorities. Iran, let's not forget that Iran gave a one-year deadline for the U.S. to come back to the agreement. However, the U.S. continued with their policy of maximum pressure. And of course, this has not given any good result. This is the information we have up until now. Back to you. Thank you, Hisham. This is with the images of what we have here and that's going on. Let's take back a question. Let's see if if this agreement cannot be surmounted. And let's see that there's this relationship of forces. On one side, you've got the U.S. with this power, with this capacity of blackmailing. And on the other side, we have Europe with their ambiguities and yes and no. Of course, they're interested in having a relationship with Iran and not getting in a fight with the U.S. and China on the other side, that they have the position of preserving peace. War is not convenient for anybody, and we must respect the agreement and in all of its parts. So, in this type of scenario, what can happen? What will be the outcome? Who will impose themselves? Let's go to a pause, and meanwhile, we will receive our guests and see what he thinks. We'll be right back. Let's continue analyzing our critical move. That is called 5+1 nuclear agreement. Is it unsurmountable? With the latest events, let's see, the U.S. has withdrawn from an agreement accusing Iran of violating it and imposing sanctions. Iran resists, it defends itself, and it decides to start also withdrawing step by step from the agreement, while all of the rest of the signatures allow for the U.S. to sanction Iran with unilateral coercive. Let's see more information and let's go to our guests. Last Saturday, the spokesperson of Iran said that his country will increase the uranium production. Instead of 10 centrifuges, they will install 40 centrifuges with the same characteristics. In the agreement of the 2015, Iran was going to diminish in 2/3 the uranium production and just using less advanced technology. Iran said that in the 2 months upcoming, 164 more centrifuges will be in place. The spokesperson of Atomic Energy said that Persia could increase their production in 20%. The U.S. reaction said that it was unacceptable. This is a consequence of the U.S. policy of sanctions, and this was increased ever since the U.S. withdrew unilaterally from the agreement. The U.S. has also increased the list of Iranian movements in the list of terrorists, and they're going to sanction countries that have transactions with Iran. Additionally, they hardened all the penalties and sanctions 3 of the space agencies, saying that they're just trying to advance the missile war. Meanwhile, the answer of Europe is ambiguous. They want to spread bridges because they need to buy energy, and at no moment they want to confront with the U.S. to go back to the agreement. The President of France, Emmanuel Macron, offered Iran a credit line in exchange for it to compromise again to the agreement. Iran is willing to dialogue. Well, our first guest is from Spain. It's Aníbal Garzón Baeza. He's an international analyst. Thank you for being with us once again. Welcome. We would like to have your assessment on the Iranian position, because what it knows is that it's not a multilateral pact. It was initially, everybody signed it, but so everybody has to do their own part. Will they be able to implement this strategy? Thank you, Lucia, for your invitation. Well, we see that in this pact, 5+1 in 2015, that the U.S. is not following the agreement. Let's see what they are doing. They've seen that Iran, without any blockade, they've been able to grow prosperously. All of the countries have put their part, but the U.S. has seen that Iran, although they have the blockade, and that Europe has a benefit in all of this because they don't produce oil and they're direct buyers and they have investments in Iran. So they see how the U.S. leaves the agreement. And also Iran, where there is a conflict with the U.S. and in Israel, that is practically the brother of Israel. Well, what has the U.S. always done? What they've done is a multilateralism that was carried out by Trump, and it's been the Republican strategy
quitando en todo momento ese pacto conjunto internacional por la paz y la prosperidad de Oriente Medio.
And they've done so because they've seen that they're isolated at every step, and they're afraid of losing hegemony on the world. Therefore, there are two fronts, the U.S. and Israel, and the other one was Iran, Syria, Russia, China, and the role that is not yet determined is the European Union. Who are they going to, on what side are they on? It's not clear what the policy of Macron is, especially with these 15 billion euros that Macron offered to Iran to try to calm down the waters and bring back Iran to the agreement. What we see is that the European Union up until now is aligned with the U.S. policy. What can we do when we see so many actions that are so erratic, like the UK? They're just adding. Then you have France offering a line of credit, but there's really no clear message towards the U.S. Nobody gives a straight face to the government of Donald Trump. The European Union is economically strong, but politically weak. In fact, in many spheres of the international scheme always depends on the U.S. And part of the Iraq war was up to them because they did not put a stop to this. And now the story repeats itself. And Europe has economic interests in Iran. But what is done in Europe? That the national interests are going above the general interests. Let's not forget what's going on with Brexit. This will, with Brexit, you see how the UK is going to be a U.S. ally. So the story repeats itself. Germany should keep a very clear foreign policy. If they don't do so, they're losing hegemony. And this is important with what's going on with the G5+1. For the U.S., the U.S. being isolated from the great bloc of the others, And what is needed is the European Union to take a stern decision.
Pero Francia y Alemania deberían llevar adelante con eso con todos los países que
And
convergen con la Unión
they
Europea.
could
No
lead
olvidemos también que hay
the
países,
rest
en
of
el
the
caso de
countries of the
España, que
European Union,
aumentaron
like
las
Spain,
inversiones y el comercio con el país persa. Por lo
that,
tanto, debería
that
también ser
increased their
consocio con sus
relationship with
intereses
Iran.
nacionales. Europa está en esa complejidad, pero
Europe
hasta
is
que
in
den un
this
paso
complex
cualitativo y no
place.
simplemente ver la visión economicista,
They
sino
should not
también
only see
política,
this
también
economic
militar,
vision,
decirlo, también
but
diplomática,
also the political and
defenderá sus
diplomatic
intereses. Mientras
perspective.
eso no se haga ese cambio
Well, that
cualitativo,
is not
seguirá
clear.
totalmente en las directrices de Estados Unidos.
They
Y
will
eso ha
still be
pasado también
following
por la
the
ruptura de
directives
relaciones, tenemos otro tema que hemos tocado
of
muy
the
a fondo,
U.S.
con Rusia, la pérdida de relaciones que ha tenido con Rusia, el conflicto de Ucrania. Europa mira
And
más los
then
intereses
let's
de
not
Estados
forget
Unidos
the
que sus
Ukraine,
propios
the
intereses. Y eso
conflict they have
cada
with
vez
Russia
hace
over
que
the
Europa
Ukraine.
más papel en su escenario internacional. O hay un cambio o
Or
Europa en la diplomacia
either
internacional
there's a
tiene
change
muy pocos
or
tiene los días contados,
they have their
porque cada
days
vez
counted
pierde mucha más
because they
legitimidad en la
lose
escena internacional.
their credibility and their stance. Aníbal, the sanctions and the unilateral procedures they've imposed on Iran are very strong. In fact, Iran has said several times through their spokespeople that they're betting on a suspension of these coercive measures, and that is the pressure that they're putting on Europe. However, there are news of recent that Iran has reached a record in the commerce of selling gas and natural gas, although regardless of the sanctions of the U.S. Over last week, they supplied thousands and thousands of tons for $70 million. So what they're saying is, this data says, what can we read into it? Well, yes, in fact, we can say that every time that there's a multilateral world where the U.S. cannot be standing in every corner, let's not forget that Asia has a strong policy. China, Russia, India, they're not going to follow any orders from the U.S. So this, it has much more a political backlash, because let's not forget that many countries who depend on that gas and petroleum depend on having the supply coming in, and they're not going to pick a war on the U.S. either. So we're not clear if the U.S. is trying to seek or avoid a new war. Right now, the U.S., either they stop doing war or they start with an indirect war. Let's not forget that Donald Trump will be a contender in the upcoming elections, and of course, he's interested in carrying forward. Lucia, can you hear me? Did we lose? Yes, we hear you. I thought something happened. Well, just to close this up, it's the fact that Donald Trump is interested in having a great image with his upcoming election. Let's not forget that Obama had the Nobel Peace Prize. So what he's trying to do is to pressure Iran, which is nothing like Iraq or Libya. Iran is an established country. It has a very stable government. It's very powerful, and it's not one of the countries that could go in and attack, like Iraq, or that was militarized like Libya. I think that right now, this is a double-tiered reason. This is the international aspect and the national aspect. After all of this, there is a possibility of dialogue between Iran and the US. And apparently, Trump said that yes, he could dialogue, but then the next day he was imposing stronger sanctions and much more sanctions that were imposed on 3 international investigation agencies. So, do you think it's true that that dialogue possibility is on the table? Well, let's not forget that the economy has a great impact. And any slight thing could change enormously the economy of countries. For example, a tweet of Donald Trump could change the Wall Street. So let's not forget that economy is the main axis, and he's an economist. So many times his messages are based on the economic interest that the U.S. has. I see it very complex that the U.S. sometimes attacks countries that are small. But this is not the country of Iran. This is not the case of Iran. It is not an isolated country. And this blockade is just a unilateral action of the U.S. What they're trying to seek is just to cover their interests. And there's a double standard, where Iran has a boycott on behalf of the U.S., and they say that they should not increase their enrichment, uranium enrichment, but when Saudi Arabia does so, there's no problem. So there should be the same standard for everybody. Therefore, this also is hindering the international policy. And this has an impact on the diplomatic and political aspect of the world. Thank you very much for your analysis. Here we have Aníbal Garzón Baeza from Spain with his vision on this critical move. Well, there's some news that was published on September 4 in Telesur that says reward up to $15 million for any information for those who can give information on the revolutionary military of Iran. So this is the type of actions that the U.S. is trying to asphyxiate, strangle. Even if there is this ghost of the dialogue in the air. Let's speak with our next guest about the conflict between this country and Israel, and what is the bet of Israel as a regional actor in the Persian Gulf. This is what we'll see with our next guest. And we'll also see what are the interests of China and Russia. We'll be right back. Let's keep on analyzing in this final round. Let's see what's going to happen with the 5+1 nuclear agreement. Is it unsurmountable? Can it be saved?
La decisión de Irán
The
es parte
decision
de
of
la
Iran is
inevitable
part
defensa que debe
of
hacer
the
ante la
of the
agresividad
defense that they
permanente de
have to
Estados Unidos y
do
de Israel.
against
Tanto
the
Irán como
decisions of
Israel
the U.S.
representan dos
Iran and
universos de
Israel
intereses geopolíticos,
represent
económicos, comerciales,
politically
religiosos
and
que los
economic
ubican en las
interests
antípodas en casi todos los
that put
escenarios.
them on
Los
counter
sectores más duros
sidewalks.
de la derecha israelí, representados en el
The
gobierno
right
de
wing of
Benjamin
Israel,
Netanyahu, hallan en la confrontación con el país
representative
persa la manera de
Benjamin
canalizar
Israel
su
of
lógica
Netanyahu,
expansionista a través de la
sees
agresividad política,
the
militar y
aggression
comercial.
against
Todas
Iran
estas tensiones
as
se
part of their
agudizan aún
mission.
más en el contexto
This is
electoral
even worse
israelí. Lo
in
mismo que el
the
Estado
midst of
estadounidense.
the
El tablero
Israeli
geopolítico en la región
elections.
se ha visto convulsionado en las últimas
There has
semanas
been
por
some
los
convulsions in
bombardeos
the
de
last
Israel en el
days
sur del
with
Líbano. Esto provocó la reacción del
some
movimiento de
bombarding of
resistencia
Israel
nacional Hezbollah, que
of
atacó a
Israel.
un vehículo blindado israelí que se dirigía
And
a
of
Aviv,
course,
una
Hezbollah
región
has
palestina
answered.
ocupada. Esta
So there are
respuesta fue
conflicts in
celebrada por el
Israel with
gobierno de Irán.
Palestine.
Los anuncios
All of this has
respecto
been
al
celebrated of
endurecimiento de Irán
Iran.
as parte de la defensa de Irán ante los
Iran,
ataques
on the other
israelíes,
hand,
ha logrado
is
establecer sus líneas
increasing
rojas,
the
incluso en los
uranium
escenarios de la
enrichment
negociación ante
and
los
has been
ataques de
able to
Estados
increase
Unidos,
their
Israel y
defenses.
Arabia Saudita. Israel ve con preocupación
Israel
los
is
cambios
worried
geopolíticos
of
en
the
Oriente
geopolitical
Medio,
changes
con
in the Middle
surgimiento de
East,
potencias rivales
the
a su
surge
hegemonía.
of
La resistencia
powers
palestina,
that could be a
siria,
rival for
libanesa,
them.
iraquí y yemení, un eje de resistencia cuyo objetivo es la recuperación de todo lo que ha usurpado el sionismo.
There are still some
Analistas señalan
countries
que
that
hay un eje
are
de
their
resistencia
allies,
que
but every
conforma
time
una línea de
they're
lucha
less
que va
and
desde la
less.
frontera occidental de Irán hasta el Mediterráneo.
And let's see, are they in capacity to resist and contain the interest of Israel as a regional actor? This is what I want to ask. Let's speak with Dr. Calvo. He's an international analyst. Hi, Lucia. Well, we were asking, is this resistance axis able to contain the interest that Israel has manifested in the region? Well, the interest that Israel has in the region are those that the U.S. has. Some decades ago, it's very hard to separate the U.S. interests to those of the Israelis. They're intimately related. And fundamentally, this begins with the Islamic revolution in Iran. And I would like to explain to our Latin American audience, we could describe it like Iran would be like the Cuba in the 60s, and the U.S. through Israel and Saudi Arabia has tried to avoid that bad example, I quote, can expand to other countries of the region where the interests of the U.S. are very vast. And so they act in tandem with Israel, with Saudi Arabia, before they did with Turkey, and they keep on doing it with a very weak Egypt. But of course, it used to be a pivotal actor in the region. Well, I think that there are some interests that come together. In this case, they're vital for Israel because they want to keep the occupation on Palestine. They are geopolitical objectives. And of course, the U.S. leads the way, and Saudi Arabia just follows the rules. If they want to keep having the benefits that the U.S. provides them with. So all of these interests act like a good break against Iran, and that bad example of becoming an independent nation that takes their own decisions and controls their companies, their frontiers, and is not willing to be led by any other foreign policy. I would like to ask you, what do you think is the destiny of this agreement with all of these interests that are so hard to make them come together? How do you see that the outcome of this? Well, Iran has decided to continue with their investigations. They also are going to continue enriching uranium. And they keep the same line in the same like they had in 2015, when in 2015 they signed the agreement. However, if the U.S. withdrew from this agreement, that liberated Iran to continue with their investigations. Of course, this is not useful for Europe. Europe pretended to continue with the nuclear agreement with Iran, but since some decades ago, it has become, through their own decision, in one of the wagons of the freight train that the U.S. pulls forward. So right now, we see that Iran is strengthened through the allies it has, China and Russia. So they're going to have to protect their scientists. They have to protect them because let's not forget that in the 2004, some Iranian scientists were killed in the streets of Tehran by Zionist spies. This was a very low blow to the investigation. But if we think of a bigger conflict, I don't think that the U.S. is in conditions right now to do so. So you think that there would not be a bigger conflict? Should there be one, what would happen? Because can you tell us, what do you think could happen if this does escalate? Well, let's not forget that in the last meeting of the G7, President Macron invited the Iranian president to visit them. This was not something that Trump enjoyed. However, this shows some independence on behalf of Europe, and that they're not going to just follow everything that the U.S. says. But it's not enough. Washington must be confronted. So any soft attempt on behalf of Europe towards the U.S., they're not going to be able to attain anything. For Europe, it's their benefits to open negotiations with Iran, because it's a very rich country. However, due to the sanctions and the blockade, they have not been able to push forward some projects where the European wanted to participate and get interesting revenues. However, ever since if they don't decide to be independent from the U.S., this will not happen. Wadi, thank you very much for your time that you've given us. See you next time. Well, let's wrap it up with all of these ideas that we've had today. Iran has been accused of being bad influence. They say it's a terrorist. They're trying to beat him because it's a sovereign actor with independent decisions, resistant. Donald Trump has decided to break and injure the agreement. Well, it withdrew from the accord that they had. We also see that what is underlying all of this is attaining all of the richness of Iran. And let's not forget that we have a choke point that is the Hormuz Strait. In the case of Europe, it has shown some independence, some small clues of independence. However, they're not enough. It would be important to see what is their posture, and will it be able to do it together, because there are several members. And with this withdrawal of the U.S., now there is these sanctions. And regardless of this action, we see that regardless of everything that the U.S. does, the commerce, all of the commerce of Iran has increased. In the case of China and Russia, they've said that they bet for peace, that they want to save the 2015 agreement. For example, China is the first Iran client, because that is a key for Israel, for Iran, to have an upper hand. In any case, the United States is not interested in having a war in this region. However, they do want to provoke and keep on saying everything they want. We'll continue analyzing this. Until next time.